Here we go again. If you're following along, this is the third installment of what I believe to be a children's book that I stumbled upon on Gutenberg.org. It's called Trains at Work. It's very comprehensive and it's very long. So if you need to ease your mind or your little ones need to ease theirs like ours often do, tune in. This is installment 3. Installment 2 is in the video lineup. You can find them. I'll link to them. And we last left off on a very thorough description of livestock cars as pulled by trains. And now we are transitioning, folks, to another enthralling topic: tank cars. Railroaders call a tank car a can. It really is an enormous can with different kinds of lining for hauling different liquids. Milk tanks have glass or steel linings. Tanks for certain chemicals are lined with rubber or aluminum or lead. Although there are more than 200 types of tank car, and here are some of the things that travel in them: fuel oil, gasoline and asphalt, molasses and sugar syrup, turpentine and alcohol, lard, corn oil, and fish oil for vitamins. Some tank cars have heating coils that warm up lard or molasses and keep it from getting too stiff to flow out easily. Most tank cars have a dome on top. If they didn't, they might burst open at the seams when the liquid within them begins to expand in hot weather. Instead, the liquid bulges up into the dome and no harm is done. Wine tank cars have 4 compartments for carrying different kinds of wine. That's it. It's just one sentence. That's all it says about wine cars. Okay. Milk tank cars are built with 2 compartments that tip slightly toward the center so that every bit of milk will flow out. Each compartment is rather like a thermos bottle, with special wrapping around it to keep the milk from getting warm and sour. And the tanks are always filled to the brim so the milk won't slosh around and churn up into a batch of butter on the road. Can you guess why milk tank cars don't need domes? Remember, the milk must stay cool. Even when the sun is hot outside, the cool milk doesn't expand, so no dome is needed to keep the tank from bursting. Hoppers and gondolas. A whole train made up of nothing but cars loaded with coal is called a black snake. Since rain and snow won't hurt coal, it travels in cars without tops. One kind of coal car has sloping ends, like the ones on this page. Picture a book in your mind, won't you? It is called a hopper car. You load the coal in at the top, but you unload it by opening trapdoors in the bottom, which let the coal drop into the chutes. Coal also travels in gondolas, which are just square-ended bins on wheels. They have to be unloaded by hand or by dumping machines. It's hard to believe how fast some of these machines work. First, a switch engine pushes the car of coal onto a platform underneath a tower. Grippers hold the car tight while it is jerked up, tilted over onto its side, dumped, then let go again empty. The whole job takes only a minute or a minute and a half. The empty car rolls away downhill while a full one is being switched into place. Another kind of dumper, the one you can see in the picture, it's basically a lineup of a drawing of coal cars. Looks rather like a barrel that can roll from side to side. It too tips the car over on its side so the coal can run out into a chute. Then the machine swings back and lets the car drift downhill. Locomotives and shops use almost a fourth of the coal on the railroad's haul. It takes much less coal now to run an engine than it used to take, because engineers and scientists have thought up ways to make locomotives better and better. They figure things so closely they can even tell how much it costs to blow an engine's whistle, 3 toots for a penny. Other things besides coal are often carried in hoppers and gondolas. Ore travels from mines to mills in hoppers. Gondolas haul lumber. Things such as sugar and chemicals are sometimes carried in covered hopper cars. Of course, these hoppers have tight lids and special linings, and they're kept very clean, so you won't find coal dust mixed with your candy. Grain cars. Early every summer, the railroads put a lot of boxcars in the bank. That means they switch the cars off onto sidings all through the wheat growing part of the country. Then when the wheat is harvested and ready to be shipped to market, the cars can be drawn out of the bank, filled up with grain, and hauled away. The wheat gets ripe in the south first. When harvest is finally there, the car moves along. All through the summer, the grain cars work their way farther north. Special grain doors have to be fitted in tight, just behind the regular sliding doors of the boxcars, to keep the wheat from leaking out. The grain doors go almost all the way to the top, but not quite. In a minute, you'll see why. After the farmers thresh their wheat, they take it to an elevator, which is an enormous storage tower close to the railroad tracks. Then a chute from the elevator loads the wheat into the cars through the space at the top of the grain doors. When a car is loaded, a man crawls in on top of the grain and hunches himself along with elbows and toes. He's the grain sampler who works for the companies that buy the wheat. Every once in a while, he pokes a gadget down into the grain and brings up a sample for from various parts of the car. These samples are enough to tell him whether the whole car is fair, good, or excellent wheat. There is only about a 2-foot space between the top of the grain and the roof of the car, so the grain samplers have to be very skinny men who can creep about easily. Odd shapes and sizes. Besides the ordinary cars that do ordinary jobs, railroads have some cars that have been made for special purposes. A medical car is really a small traveling hospital. It goes along with construction crews when they have a big job to do far from a station. A trained nurse has her office in the car. She can take care of small injuries or give first aid until a doctor arrives. One special car looks like a load of big sausages. It's really a sort of boxcar frame in which long, heavy pipes have been fitted so that they can wind back and forth. The pipes carry a load of helium gas. Helium is used in balloons and blimps because it is very light and it can't catch fire. Even when this car is fully loaded with all the gas that can be squeezed into the pipes, it weighs only a ton more than an empty car. Most loaded freight cars weigh between 40 and 80 tons. Sometimes a factory wants to ship very tall machinery by freight, so the railroad has to load it onto an underslung, flat car that looks as if it had a bite taken out of its middle. It's called a depressed center car. But still, the machine may stick up too high to go through underpasses. Then a special department gets to work figuring out what to do. Men who know every mile of track work out a route that has no underpasses. This sometimes means that the machine will make a dozen detours before it's being delivered. Circus cars are sometimes just flat cars which carry the animals' cages, but some of them are specially built like stables, with stalls and a storage place for food. Fancy racehorses ride in padded stable cars too. A pickle car is made of 6 separate wooden tanks. Men at the pickle works fill them with cucumbers and brine. Then the car delivers them to the factory to be bottled. Trestles, tunnels, and things. Have you ever wondered why some railroad bridges across rivers are so very high, while automobile bridges are quite low? The trains look a little scary, rushing all the way up in the air, but there's a good reason why they do it, and those tall trestles are so wonderfully planned and built that they are very safe. Trains can't climb hills nearly as well as automobiles can. The slopes the trains go up must be very gentle. Even a little bit of an up and down grade slows a train a great deal. So the men who build railroads try to make the tracks run along as nearly level as possible. Next time you see a high bridge across a river, look at the rest of the country around. You'll see the river cuts deep between the two hills. The bridge is built on tall stilts to make a level path for the train from one hilltop to the other. When trains have to go up or down a very long hill, the builders have a problem. They must slope the tracks very gradually. In mountains, this means the track zigs and zags back and forth, with long, wide curves between the zigs and zags. If you look back at the picture on page 19, picture in your mind, you will see how one railroad solved the problem. The rails are laid so that the spiral is upward, making a loop. When a very long train travels along the loop, it's like a huge snake coiled around over on its tail. Unless it's absolutely necessary, the builders try not to make curves. Trains run faster along rails that are straight as well as flat. Every bend means that the engineer has to slow down a little. In slow, there are two reasons why railroads often have tunnels right through mountains. Instead of climbing far up and then coming down in long, slow curves, the train can run quickly straight through. Tunnels are hard to dig. They often have to be blasted out of solid rock, so the builders don't make them any bigger than they have to. Of course, there's not room for man to stand up on the top of a freight car as it goes through a tunnel. To protect brakemen who might forget, there's a device called a telltale close to the mouth of a tunnel. It is simply a fringe of cords hanging down from a tall bar across a track. The cords touch the careless brakeman and warn him to get down right away before he's scraped off and hurt. If you started in the morning, it would take you till night just to name the inventions that have made railroading more safe than it was 100 years ago. Granted, folks, this book was from the 50s. Some of them are simple things like a telltale. Others, such as air brakes, are complicated. The most wonderful invention of all took hundreds of scientists a long time to work out. It's called Centralized Traffic Control, or CTC. To see what CTC does, you'll first have to imagine a stretch of railroad way out in the country, 30 miles from any station. There's just one main track, with sidings where trains running in opposite directions can pass each other. Each engineer has his train orders, so he knows whether he's to stop or supposed to go on to the siding or continue straight through. But unexpected things always happen. If a train is late, it may not get to the siding on time. Then there will be a danger of a collision. That's where the CTC comes in. Trains cannot bump into each other when the CTC is at work. It's a wonderful system of electric wires that run along the tracks, all the way to an office building in a railroad town. The wires end in a long board that's dotted with lights and small levers. Now when train wheels travel over the rails, the wires carry electric messages to that long board. Lights flash on to tell the man who watches the board exactly where the train is. If he wants to go onto a siding, he pushes a lever. Electric switches miles away guide the train's wheels off the main track. At the same time, signal lights tell the engineer to stop. What's more, CTC has extra safety machinery, just in case the man at the board makes a mistake. If he pushes levers that might make two trains bump into each other, stop signals go on along the route and the line. All trains come to a halt until the mistake is corrected. In the old days, trains that ran through western ranch country were often late. The crew had orders to pull onto a siding and knew they might have to wait a long time, so they could just take a walk to the nearest house, wake the rancher, and settle down for a visit. If their host was in a good humor, he'd build a fire and cook them a meal. Then, when they heard the whistle of the approaching train, they'd start back in plenty of time to signal as it passed their siding. Railroaders have fun talking about those early times, but they'd really rather have the safety of centralized traffic control. CTC helps to keep passenger trains moving safely into big cities, too. The man at the board, he's called the dispatcher, decides which track each train should use. He pushes the lever. Electric switches move. Signals flash to the engineer, and lights on the board show every train moving along. The captain and his cars. Maybe you think the conductor of a passenger train is only the man who takes tickets and says, "All aboard," but he really is the boss of the whole train. Even the engineer must follow his signals. That's why they call the conductor the captain. The brakeman is the conductor's helper. Together they collect tickets or fares and help passengers on and off at stations. On the slick, fast trains called streamliners, the conductor has quite a job to do. Many of the passengers are making long trips, so they have complicated tickets that allow them to stop at several places and then come home again. The conductor has to check the tickets and make sure that they are right. For short trips, conductors and brakemen take care of everything. But a streamliner needs a lot of other people who do special jobs. The first one you're most likely to meet is the stewardess. She makes passengers comfortable. She answers questions and points out things that are particularly interesting to look at through the window. At night, stewardesses bring pillows to coach passengers and help them tilt their seats back. In some cars, each seat has a leg rest that pulls out, making a sort of couch for anyone who wants to take a nap. The stewardess usually gives extra attention to children. She may read them stories in the playroom at the end of one of the cars, or give them crayons and coloring books, or play records for them. She even has a supply of diapers for small babies and a refrigerator to keep their milk cool. A streamliner is really a sort of hotel on wheels. The observation car is like a lobby, with big soft chairs and sofas, tables full of magazines, a radio and desks for writing letters. At one end is a telephone booth where you can call up anyone you want. This telephone works to radio. The radio operator on the train connects you with a regular telephone operator who completes the call over ordinary phone wires. If you need a haircut, you can visit a barber shop on the train. Porters will press your clothes and shine your shoes for you. You can buy ice cream sodas at the snack bar. A businessman who wants to do some work can also use a train stenographer to type out letters for him. And no matter how disagreeable the weather, a streamliner is comfortable for its air-conditioned coaches. Most fun of all are the streamliners that have double-decker cars called Vista Dome and Astrodomes. The dome sticks up above the car like an oversized caboose. Like the freight brakeman, you can sit in the upper deck, look out over the windows in the dome and see everything around you. Daytime, there may be mountains. Nighttime, you can lean back in the adjustable seats and watch the stars. Streamliners go very fast, but not too fast for safety. Beside the track are signs that tell the engineer what the speed limits are. For extra safety, the locomotive may have a powerful headlight that sends out its beam like a searchlight. The beam travels across the sky in a figure-8 movement far ahead. People on highways see it and are warned to stop at a grade crossing in plenty of time. And this concludes this installment of Trains at Work. We'll pick up next time with eating and get a really thorough look at the galley of a train. So hold on to your hats. Sorry it's been a while since the last installment. Baseball practices, that sort of thing. Such is life. Thanks for tuning in.